It started with something small, something easy to ignore. Michael had always trusted Emily. Married for 8 years, they'd weathered tough times together. Job losses, a miscarriage, cross-country moves. Through it all, they'd remained solid. But over the past few months, something had shifted. At first, he chalked it up to stress. Emily had started a new job at a consulting firm, one that demanded long hours, late-night Zoom calls, and weekend trips. He noticed she laughed at her phone more often. She began turning its screen down at dinner. Her hugs grew shorter, her gaze more distant. She was there, physically, but emotionally, she seemed to live somewhere else entirely. Michael wanted to believe it was just the workload, a phase. He reminded himself not to be paranoid. After all, they'd always promised each other honesty, above all. But something in his gut whispered otherwise. It happened on a Tuesday night. Emily had gone to bed early, claiming exhaustion after back-to-back meetings. Michael stayed up, half watching a documentary while catching up on emails. He reached over to plug in Emily's phone, which was buzzing with low battery warnings. The screen lit up. A message preview popped up, just a few words, but enough to freeze him. Last night was everything. I can't stop thinking about you. Michael stared, heart thudding. The sender's name was saved as just an initial, T. That wasn't how Emily saved her coworkers' contacts. He tapped the message. He didn't want to. He felt like an intruder. But something primal inside him surged. He had to know. There were more messages, flirty, intimate, dates, times, mentions of hotel rooms, photos, and then, finally, a message from Emily. I wish I could be with you without having to lie. Michael dropped the phone onto the couch like it burned. His world had just split open. Michael didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed beside her, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of betrayal press against his chest. By morning, his decision was made. He couldn't pretend. He wouldn't wait. He needed answers. Emily moved through her morning routine. Coffee, makeup, checking her phone. Michael sat at the kitchen table, waiting. When she walked in, he didn't hesitate. Whose tea? Emily froze. Her hand trembled slightly as she set her coffee down. For a moment, she didn't say anything, just stared at him, eyes wide. Then, like a mask slipping, she dropped into the nearest chair. You went through my phone. Michael's jaw clenched. Don't do that. Don't make that the issue. Silence. Then she looked away. It's someone from work, she said quietly. It happened a few times. I didn't mean for it to. Michael felt like the floor was tilting under him. How long? Emily hesitated. 3 months. His throat tightened. Why? She sighed, her voice cracking. I don't know. I felt invisible. We were just roommates. I wasn't looking for anything, but then it happened. And I didn't stop it. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just sat there, hollow and ashamed, and Michael, stunned and silent, felt the first cracks of his world deepening. Michael didn't shout. He didn't throw things or storm out. Instead, he sat in silence for hours after Emily left for work, staring at the half-full coffee cup she'd left behind, its steam slowly fading, just like everything they'd built. At first, it was shock. His mind couldn't fully process it. The facts were clear, messages, confessions, but his heart was still trying to deny it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she just needed something he hadn't given. Maybe he could fix it. But then came the rage. It hit him like a wave. Every kind gesture he'd shown her now felt like a mockery. Every late-night talk, every inside joke, every vacation photo on the wall, it all felt tainted. He punched the kitchen counter, then immediately regretted it, pain flaring in his knuckles. It didn't help. Nothing did. Days blurred. He stopped answering texts. Food lost its taste. Music felt hollow. Nights were the worst, when he rolled over in bed and found only cold sheets, even when she was beside him. Then came the sadness, the kind that seeps into your bones, slow and heavy. Not just the sadness of betrayal, but of loss, of knowing something sacred had been broken, of realizing you weren't enough for someone you gave everything to, and finally, acceptance. Not peace, not yet, but clarity. She had made a choice. And now, he had to make his. Michael didn't make the decision overnight. He tried. For a few days, they talked. Long, painful conversations filled with guilt, explanations, and apologies. Emily insisted it was over, that it had meant less than. It seemed that she had been lost, not just in the affair, but in herself. She asked for a second chance, and part of Michael wanted to give it. For the years they had shared. For the life they had built. For the version of her he used to know, but something inside him had shifted, something he couldn't undo. Trust, once broken, didn't just heal because someone said sorry. He realized. He'd always be wondering. Always second-guessing. Always half there, though he didn't want to live like that. So one evening, as the sun dipped behind the houses across the street, he sat her down and said the words he never imagined he'd have to. "I can't do this anymore." Emily cried. For the first time since the affair had come to light, she truly broke. Not just from guilt, but grief. She didn't fight the decision. She knew it was coming. She just hadn't wanted to believe it. They agreed on a separation. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't bitter. It was heartbreakingly quiet. They divided their things. She moved into a friend's place. Michael stayed in the house alone, and just like that, the life they knew ended. Months passed. The house was quieter now. Still. Sometimes painfully so. Michael filled the silence with long walks, therapy sessions, and journaling, trying to understand not just what had happened, but who he was without her. He found pieces of himself in unexpected places, cooking again without checking if she'd like the recipe, rediscovering books he used to love, reconnecting with old friends he drifted from. The pain didn't vanish, but it changed shape, less of a wound, more of a scar. Looking back, he realized the affair hadn't just shattered his trust in her, it had forced him to confront the parts of himself he'd ignored. His need to feel chosen. His tendency to overlook warning signs in the name of love. His fear of being alone, and yet, he survived. His advice to anyone in the same place: don't rush your healing. Don't drown in the guilt of what you missed or the hope that they'll change. Sometimes, walking away isn't weakness, it's clarity. You owe it to yourself to be in a relationship where love doesn't require you to betray yourself. Michael still believed in love. But now, he believed in himself first. After Emily left, Michael noticed her absence in the smallest things. The way she used to hum while brushing her teeth. The shoes she always left just slightly off the mat. The faint scent of her shampoo still lingering in the bathroom. Mornings were the hardest. They used to sit on the porch together with coffee before work. Now he drank his alone, staring at the empty chair beside him, and weekends, once filled with errands, movie nights, and spontaneous drives, stretched into long, silent stretches of time he didn't know how to fill. He caught himself reaching for his phone to text her, forgetting for a moment that she wasn't part of his life anymore. That he had made that choice. Healing, he realized, wasn't linear. Some days he felt strong, like he'd made the right call. Other days he questioned everything. Was there more he could have done? Did he give up too easily? The house had never been so clean. He kept himself busy with chores, projects, anything to fill the hours. But grief had a way of slipping through the cracks. He wasn't just mourning the betrayal, he was mourning the version of himself that believed in forever. It was bound to happen eventually. Michael was at the grocery store, halfway through his list, when he saw her. Emily. Across the produce section, standing next to a man he didn't recognize. Tall, clean-shaven, well-dressed. They were laughing, not a polite laugh, not a forced one, but that easy, familiar kind of laughter that used to belong to them. Michael froze, caught off guard by the sharp twist in his gut. It wasn't jealousy, not entirely. It was the realization that life had moved on for her, that she wasn't grieving in the same way he was. Or at least, not publicly. She hadn't seen him. He ducked into the next aisle, heart racing, unsure if he felt more embarrassed or angry later. In the car, he sat with the engine running, staring out at nothing. It wasn't that he wanted her back, not anymore. But it stung to see her happy. Free. As if the wreckage she left behind was already cleaned up and forgotten. He realized then that healing wasn't just about letting go of her. It was about letting go of how she moved on without him. Michael had never been the type to open up easily. Not about emotions. Especially not about something as raw and humiliating as being cheated on. But eventually, the silence got too heavy. One evening, over beers with his oldest friend, Marcus, the words just came out. She cheated, Michael said flatly. 3 months. Someone from her job. Marcus didn't speak right away. He didn't offer cliches or outrage. He just sat there, letting the words settle. Then he nodded slowly and said, "Damn, man. I'm sorry." That simple, honest response broke the dam. Over the following weeks, Michael told a few more friends. One had gone through something similar. Another admitted they had seen signs but didn't want to interfere. Each conversation added a new layer of perspective. He wasn't alone. And maybe he never had been. He just never let people see behind the curtain. These conversations didn't erase the pain, but they helped ground him, gave him language for things he couldn't describe on his own, helped him realize how much he'd isolated himself in the marriage long before the affair. For the first time in a long while, he felt seen and, more importantly, heard. Michael wasn't sure therapy would help. He sat through the first session with his arms crossed, giving short, guarded answers. The therapist, a calm woman in her 50s, didn't push, she just listened. And when he finally said, "I don't even know who I am without her," she nodded like she'd heard it 100 times before. Over the next several weeks, something started to shift. Therapy became a space where Michael could unravel not just the affair, but the years leading up to it, patterns he hadn't seen before. How he'd stopped expressing his needs. How he avoided conflict to keep the peace. How his sense of worth had become entangled in being the steady one. He had spent so long trying to be the good husband that he hadn't noticed how much of himself he had set aside. He also began to recognize that Emily's betrayal, while devastating, wasn't just about him. It was a reflection of her choices. Her emptiness, not his inadequacy. For the first time, he started asking questions not about her, but about himself. Who am I when no one's watching? What do I need? Not just in a partner, but in a life. Slowly, he was building a new foundation, one that wasn't built on someone else's love, but on self-respect and clarity. Healing wasn't a thunderclap moment. It was a series of quiet, almost imperceptible steps. Michael found himself smiling at a joke from a coworker. He cooked a meal just for himself and actually enjoyed it. He signed up for a pottery class, something he joked about trying someday but never had. One afternoon, he cleaned out the closet where Emily's things had once lived. He packed her sweaters, shoes, and scarves into boxes. No anger, no bitterness, just a slow, steady acceptance. Friends noticed the change too. Michael was still cautious, still guarded, but there was a lightness to him that hadn't been there for months. It was progress. He began to imagine a future not defined by the pain, but by possibility, and while the ache of loss still lingered, it no longer controlled him. For Michael, trust felt like shattered glass. He realized the hardest part wasn't just Emily's betrayal. It was the fear that anyone else might hurt him the same way. He found himself hesitating to open up, keeping conversations shallow, guarding his heart like a fortress. But life didn't wait. New friendships formed, old ones rekindled. Slowly, people chipped away at his walls, not with grand gestures, but with small acts of consistency, showing up, listening, being honest. Michael learned that trust wasn't about perfection. It was about vulnerability and the courage to risk being hurt again, knowing that not everyone would break him. He started taking chances, sharing more, asking for help when he needed it, and in doing so, he discovered something powerful, the human capacity to heal with others, not just alone. For a long time, joy felt foreign to Michael. He hadn't realized how much of his happiness had been tied to Emily, her laughter, her presence, the simple comfort of us. But slowly, little moments began to reappear. He found himself humming while gardening, the sun warm on his face. He laughed aloud during a comedy show with friends, a sound he thought he'd forgotten how to make. On a quiet Sunday morning, he brewed his favorite coffee and savored it. No distractions, just presence. Joy wasn't the blinding, overwhelming kind. It was subtle, quiet, but real, and with it came hope. Hope that life could be beautiful again. That happiness could be reclaimed, piece by piece. That even after the darkest nights, the sun would rise. As time passed, Michael began to feel ready, not ready to rush into something new, but ready to open the door just a crack. He started thinking about what he wanted, not just in a partner, but in himself. The qualities he valued, the boundaries he needed, the life he hoped to build. He updated his dating profile, not with desperation, but with honesty and intention. He reminded himself that trust would take time, that healing was ongoing, but that hope could coexist with caution. Most importantly, he promised himself to never lose sight of who he was. Michael knew the road ahead wouldn't be perfect. There would be setbacks, moments of doubt, and vulnerability. But this time, he was walking forward with his eyes wide open, and a heart willing to try again. Looking back on everything, Michael knew the affair had changed him forever. It shattered his sense of security, forced him to face uncomfortable truths, and challenged his deepest beliefs about love and loyalty. But it also taught him invaluable lessons that he learned that healing is not linear. It takes time, patience, and grace. That forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. That self-worth isn't dependent on someone else's choices. Most of all, he realized that the greatest love he could offer was the love he gave himself. To anyone facing betrayal, Michael's advice was simple but hard-earned: trust your feelings, but don't let pain define you. Seek support. Take the time you need to rebuild your sense of self. And when you're ready, don't be afraid to hope again. You deserve honesty, respect, and a love that doesn't ask you to lose yourself. The past was a chapter, not the whole story, and Michael was finally ready to write the next one.